Hello book lovers and welcome to Book Talk Radio Club. My name is Claire Perkins and today I'm talking to author Grace T. Solomon. Grace has published two books, Torn and Power in Us. Torn is a collection of novelettes and short stories that are diverse, intense and thought-provoking and are about how women face and battle stigmatization from infertility, immigration policies, social media bullying, culture abuse, xenophobia, corruption, modern slavery, discrimination and racism. Power in Us is the story of Jacqueline, who is never going to be accepted by her activist group. It's not just her principles that are different, it's everything, her family, her community, her racial and political identity. Let's find out more. Hi Grace, first of all, welcome and thank you for coming to talk with me on Book Talk Radio Club.
Thank you, Claire.
And my pleasure. Grace, let's start off with your first book, Torn. It's a collection of novelettes and short stories about how women face and battle stigmatization from infertility, immigration policies, social media bullying, culture abuse, xenophobia, corruption, modern slavery, discrimination and racism. Wow, that's a lot to say in one breath. Why these particular subjects and why just from a woman's point of view?
I lost my brother at the age of 29 to medical malpractice. And that loss has taught me the essence of hope and courage.
Right.
And for me, it's the courage to be able to do that which you must do in the moment that you are. And not to be confounded by the rules of the world. Not to live in the fear of, will my character upset someone somewhere? Does my character have to fit into a preset or a rules of the world? And is that hope for me also, that in every moment that we're still breathing, we can be the change that we want to see in the world. So I think every day when I write, I give myself the freedom to explore stories that many might not find conventional. Just like, you've mentioned in terms of immigration policy, is it a cultural abuse? The stories that many would not find, the everyday thing that you should focus on. And that's the thing for me. I kept giving myself the permission to do that, the courage to be able to explore that. Because the key thing for me is that the extraordinary lies in the ordinary. And just because we see the ordinary the way they are doesn't mean that's really what it is. And it's about me just having the courage to be able to say what I want to say and what the character want to say, because there's an art to writing. It's a craft.
Yes.
And I don't want to be afraid to do that. So it's really important for me.
But
also...
Sorry,
go
please.
ahead.
No, please, carry on.
Also, when I was young, I read a quote by Toni Morrison that say she said you have to write, what you want to read. And that kind of stayed with me for a long period of time. And I remember in 2014, there's this family that got separated as a result of immigration policy. And every time people would tell that story, they talk about, the man and the woman was made out to be inconsequential. And every time I listened to that story, I could see that she sacrificed everything, to keep her family together. And no one seems to see that. And then, it dawned on me that this is another example of how the society just glazed over women's role and, forgotten the critical aspect that women play in the society. And for me, that is kind of like a mission that I want to see, that I want to talk from a woman point of view, because I can see that, what women do every time I have seen, it's not just about saying that women are stronger, independent. It's about the everyday woman and the great achievement that they're doing. Just because the spotlight is not on them doesn't mean that these women are not doing great things. And that's really the key for me here, which is why I write a lot about women. I mean, I do have male characters. It's just for this particular story, Torn, it's all women. And that's something I'm really happy about and proud of.
I'm sorry for the loss of your brother, obviously, but what you're saying is so true. It's absolutely true. Shall we go through the stories and you can tell us about them? Let's start off with A Girl with a Purpose. A look in the eye of a stranger leads to a rescue mission. Tell me more.
Thank you for saying about the loss of my brother. Thank you for that. In terms of A Girl with a Purpose, it's a story that explores modern slavery. It dives into the world of prostitution, ring, and abuse. The main character in that story is Bella Williams. But even in the story, I explore how women, strengthen one another, because there's three characters, and the three key characters is Claire, Pero, and Beatrice, and they're all women, and our women strengthen one another, and that's kind of like one of another key thing for me in terms of, a lot of the society, they talks about women competition, they pitch women against one another.
Yes.
But in this story, it's about actually no. I've seen a lot of women about how they actually, we rise each other up, we provide support to one another, and that story is doing it. But it's the fact that it's doing it at a very critical angle, talking about modern slavery in terms of prostitution, abuse that young girls go through, and seeing how these three different characters come together to be able to provide rescue, for each other. And the key thing for me in this story is also about, it talks about from a Pero's point of view, she's trying to rebuild her life, after being a survivor of modern slavery. And just a single encounter with a stranger changed that, because that encounter forces her to go on a rescue mission. And it's also our everyday thing that we do, something as simple as making someone new can just change the direction of your life.
Very much so. Very much so.
And that's another key thing for me. So even in my story, even when it's got that kind of, the heavy stuff going on, in this case, in terms of that, prostitution abuse, is also looking at the little things that we miss, and, reminding us that those little things actually go a long way. That if we could just look, we might find the purpose to things and achieve what to others seems impossible, just by us, taking a moment and just looking around us and seeing in those little things that is around us.
Truly a family, a woman trapped in a cycle of multiple miscarriages is forced to make a life-changing decision. What's all that about?
Yeah, that is actually a story that is deeper in a way for me, because that story is about a couple battling with miscarriages. And I've read a lot of book on, on women that are suffering miscarriages, even not just miscarriages, stillborns. But in this particular story, I'm exploring miscarriages. But for this particular couple, Kunle and Liliana, even after suffering their fifth miscarriage, they are unable to grieve or even process the new reality that they might, their dream of having a family might be unachievable, because immigration authorities are threatening to break the couple apart. And in this story, I explore the struggle faced by immigrants in attaining residential status, the cruelty of immigration system. And these are things that normally, which is why I said in the beginning, I give myself the courage to explore this story, the courage to say that which people might not find conventional. And in this case is that, because in this case, I'm looking at how the immigration policy can be unfair to those that want to go through the proper channel. People that want to do the right thing, but they are being stuck in the law that just can't seem to give them a break. So in this story, for me, particularly even as a writer, I get to go through this with a couple. And that was the beautiful thing about the craft, because sometimes in life, when we have a challenging situation, things around us is not just giving us the opportunity to even take the time to grieve or even process what we're going through, because we have other things that's really dragging us in all corner. And for this couple is that immigration policy issue. Despite the fact that they've got 5 miscarriages, they can't even process, it's a big thing, but they can't even do it. And that's the thing for this story for me, is having the courage to explore that and to talk about it.
Clouded Justice, a family goes on a mission to prove their daughter is not a murderous sociopath, despite the overwhelming evidence otherwise.
Yes, this story for me is got an unusual bond. What do I mean by that? In 2012, I remember, I can't remember if it's towards the end, but in 2012, I saw a video of 4 young men being brutally murdered. They were burnt alive. And it was just for an accusation of stealing. And I remember that scene stayed with me for years, because the brutality of humans was hard for me to comprehend. I just could not understand it. And then in 2018, someone I knew had a near-death experience for wrong accusation. But the thing that stood out for me was when the perpetrators were brought to justice, she was asked to, say something and see how she want to handle it. And she chooses to forgive them. So that kind of reminded me that as individuals, we must rise above the narrow concerns of our own, our individual needs to the broader needs of all humanity. So that's the key thing for me in this story, forgiveness. So, and I think in that moment, when I was with that person, the character of Allah was born in me. It did take me like a few months to write, and it wasn't about that person's story at all. It was a different line, but it's kind of remembering that the key for me there is forgiveness. That as human beings, we must learn to go beyond our own individual needs and go above to the needs of humanity, and that is key for me. And in this story again, we get to see the relationship of a mother and a daughter. We get to see how far a woman can go for one another. Because in this story, we get to see Allah, our mother, and also our sister, who is got learning disability, and we get to see how they each stand for each other and support one another in a moment of crisis, especially when what she's been accused of is something that there's just no forgiveness for herself, and to just see our family, support one another, and how we can use the power of forgiveness to overcome the demons in us.
Unforeseen hope. A young mother searches for a safe haven for her daughter and herself at the risk of losing her true love.
Yes, that story is me exploring victimization.
Right.
Victim blaming in African society.
Okay.
How the victim is always been blamed. And in this story, I went through the eyes of in this story, I actually went through the eyes of a young mother, and now, after 10 years of captivity, she's still finding herself subject to endless scrutiny. People are still kind of, constantly victimizing her every day. And in that story, I explore what it means to be facing victim blaming, and how do you navigate that world? How do you get, especially in our case, when the life of our daughter is hanging in the balance, how do we navigate that? How do we fight? Because fighting something that you can see is easy, but how do you fight a society? How do you fight a society, a whole big world that is meant to, protect you and provide a safe platform, but they won't giving you that victim blaming? How do you deal with that? And in that story, I explore that and what it means, and how the strength of a woman can just overcome a lot of things, and how it can take us,
so true.
in a long way.
So
and that's
true.
it. And it's just beautiful to see for me, actually, in this story. It's a lot of learning for me, And
I can see why you're a good screenwriter.
Thank you.
The characters in these stories, are they based on people you know or your own experiences? I mean, I know you've given us some idea, but can you go a bit deeper?
I think, firstly, for me, I would say that my stories are about human beings. They're a combination of realism and fiction. Some of them are based on stories. It wouldn't be exactly the story that I have here. It's something, because I think personally that's the craft. You let the character develop in your narrative as you write it. But the key thing for me is it's based on human beings. Even though I use made up names, places, characters, but at the end of the day, my characters still smile. They cry. They love. They forgives. And so, yes, both of the experience in my own life and that of others have influenced a lot of my stories. But some of my stories, I've experienced nothing like it, or I've known someone like it that have experienced something like that. But I'm sure that when someone read it somewhere, they would, feel a similar experience with it. They would identify with it, because at the end of the day, the story is about human beings.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. You've received some wonderful reviews for Torn, including captivating, heart-pulling, and startlingly insightful. And the stories are on a mission, electrifying and painfully beautiful. Also, this is a powerful collection of stories that jolt us alive with a spark of cruelty, surge of darkness, unexpected violence, betrayal, and the severe impact of a decision. Let's go on to your second book, Power in Us. The book blurb for Power in Us starts off with, "Our differences may divide us, but hope will unite us." Tell me what this means to you, Grace.
For me, this means that we can achieve more if we can have that honest assessment with each other. Because I believe that an integral part of any human being is hope.
Yes.
Everyone hopes for something.
Yeah.
This morning I woke up hoping that by the end of today I would write at least 1,000 words.
Did you?
Of my new book. And so for me, this story is exploring that our hope, as human beings for a better world, can teach us to put our differences aside and work together. Because the stories about racism and discrimination, it covers the challenges, the black and other minority group faces as a result of race,
Mm.
but also it covers the unconscious discrimination that supporters of the movement face, because there's a particular line in the story that I remember I've said it a lot of times to some of my friends when I tell them, you don't understand what it means to be black, you don't understand what it means to actually be black or be a black woman. And this is actually a line that Rachel says, in the book itself, because I remember when I read it back 3 times, I said, oh my god, I say this myself. But the key thing for me there is what the story taught me, even personally writing it, is that yes, it is clear that we cannot, a white person cannot understand what it means to be black, but we must learn to actually be able to put our differences aside so that we can work together, because after all, as humans, we are hope. Hope is an integral part of all of us, and our hope for a better tomorrow, a better future, should be what is the focus is to bring us together so we can fight against racism and discrimination. And that's the key thing for me here. And the characters again are women, and in that story, I've been able to explore, how women give so much and they get little recognition for it, and our women are kind of very integral to everything that we do. And it's really beautiful to see these two characters. I love their boldness, the devotion,
All right, but let me stop you there a minute, Grace, because we'll go into that in a moment, if I may. So here we have Jacqueline, who is never going to be accepted by her activist group. It's not just her principles that are different, it's everything. Her family, her community, her racial and political identity. So Grace, why she joins an activist group that is clearly not in line with her racial and political identity?
Claire, you know that as human beings, every day, some of us, we're saddled with our family values and principle and the society identity for us, which sometimes is in contrast with our own belief and our own ideas. I remember growing up and thinking, that's not what I believe in, but sometimes it's your family values and they expect you to carry it on,
yes,
or your family principles.
True.
So that's the case in Jacqueline's case. For her, this activist group actually go in line with her own beliefs and her idea of what she wanted the world to be, which is why she joined them. And it's a good reminder that sometimes we are saddled with what we don't want to be. The society gives us an identity, or even our family, and we're expected to uphold it without anyone asking us, is that what we want?
True, very true. So what kind of character is Jacqueline? Paint a picture of Jacqueline in words.
Yes. This is beautiful because I can just begin to imagine her now. For me, I would say one thing, the things I love about her, if I could use word, is her devotion to what she believes in. Because, like you said earlier, she wasn't accepted, but her devotion was clear that despite the fact that she wasn't accepted, she was facing a lot of pushback. Her devotion made her, still true. And in the book, when you read it, the other thing that really stood out from her is her spirituality, her fairness, her integrity, her sincerity. She's a fearless woman. I love that about her. And she's courageous, to be able to stand in the face of it all and said yes, because the entire story takes place in a prison cell.
Right.
So yeah.
So I have a funny feeling that there's a bit of you in Jacqueline.
It's beautiful for you to say that, because actually Jacqueline is a white woman, but that's amazing,
Oh, is she?
Because yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah, she is.
You got me there.
It is, but that's the thing, because at the end of the day, like I said, is what brings us together as human beings.
Exactly.
Exactly. And that's the fact that our hope for a better tomorrow, and that should teach us enough to put aside our differences.
I couldn't agree more. Years later, when an arrest opens a door to an opportunity for her to address these concerns with her group, Jacqueline is forced to tackle them without giving away too much, of course. What happens?
So what happened is we get to see her have an opportunity to actually face this group of people, which in this story are the movement leaders, and get to have that heart-to-heart discussion. And what I love about that heart-to-heart discussion is each of them get to bring their differences to the table. We get to hear Rachel talk about difficult it is for a black woman or a black man in this world. And we get to hear Jacqueline said how difficult it is for me as a white person when I'm trying to support this cause and I'm being told you don't know what it feels like. And we get to explore this, but the key thing is she gets to learn that this is bigger than any of them. And this is where I think in that story I do explore, kind of the system marginalization that is, the system is kind of in the system is way beyond an individual. But also, despite that, I still talk about the importance of us being able to work together as one and setting aside our differences. But I think it's really important that we should remember that some of these things are systematic racism and they're inbuilt. It's not just something that one person can wake up and fix. But I do believe that every little step can take us is a step forward. I always say that even if all you take is one step, is way better than the way you were before, But it's that key thing for me. So she gets to see that, and she gets to learn that maybe she is not seeing things the way she should have seen it, but she also gets to let the other group also see it from a side. So it's about having that honest assessment, like I said in the beginning. We should be able to give each other the opportunity to say things honestly so that we can heal and we can go forward together.
I've got to ask you, you said before we were talking about what it's like to be a black woman. Tell me, I'm a white woman, you tell me what it's like to be a black woman here in the UK.
So Claire, personally for me, if someone asks me what it's like to be a black woman, personally for me in the UK, I would say honestly, sometimes it is really hard when it is hard I can't talk about a black woman in terms of the entire race. I can only talk for me.
Sure, of course, absolutely.
So in terms of myself, what it feels like is that constant, like I said, that inbuilt discrimination. That the biggest thing that I face is every time when I know I'm being treated wrong and I open my mouth to say anything, someone just jump on me and say, "Don't play the race card." And I'm thinking, you know what? That is not even the issue right now. The issue right now is the fact that you're refusing to see that I've been treated injustice, and this is not right. And for you not to have seen that and to actually want it's kind of people being defensive all the time. I mean, a lot of time, I can't count the number of time where I'm even a woman, I'm not a man. I can imagine what it's like to be, I can remember what my brothers go through. But for me personally, I remember being stopped at the airport once, and the harassment was just, and I kept asking this lady, "What have I done?"
Yeah.
And she just kept saying, she just refused to say anything. Just kept saying, "You just have to order, you just have to sit there." And the way I was being treated, like almost like a criminal, that just made me cry. And I just told her that, you know what, if this is just a normal, you're just picking someone from the crowd to stop and search, how about you just pick 3-4 people, and not just about just me being black only? That would go a long way, that would show me that this is a fair situation.
Yes.
Is the amount of time that I've been put in an unfair situation, I can tell you, and every time I can see it glaring that is unfair, but every time I dare to say something, someone just jump on me and say, "Don't play that card." And I'm saying that is a problem. If you can't see that this is wrong, if you can't see that, why do I have to prove that I am not? Everything is like, I've been in a situation whereby I say something and I have to prove that what I'm saying is honest. I have to prove my honesty.
You shouldn't have to.
I have to prove my what. I have to prove that over. It becomes tiresome,
Sure.
if you have to prove it over and over again. I've seen people look at me. I remember I walked into a class before. I'm a trainer, so I train in project management. And everyone in the class just stopped to look at me. And I said, "Is something wrong?" And they just like, "You are our teacher?" And I just thought, that is... and I just laughed at them because I understand where they're coming from. For in that situation, there was a lot of things at play. There was a fact that I was black. There was a fact that I was young. There was a fact that I was a woman. There's a lot of, because this room was filled with, very, not extremely old, but major, and there was no single black person. But it was the way they asked me, "Oh wow, you are our teacher," and I was like, "Something wrong with that?" They were like, "We're just not expecting you." And that moment alone, I've learned to deal with it, but it can be hard.
Sure.
It can be hard when you thought, wow. I shouldn't have to prove myself. And at the
Absolutely.
end of the training, they came to me and said, "You're amazing. We were not expecting you would be that good." And I said,
Which is
"I know
another
you."
insult.
What I mean, and I said, "I know you think that that's a compliment, but it's
No,
not."
no, it's called a backhanded compliment.
So that is what it means for me, which is why I say I can't speak for everyone.
No, of
But
course
it's
you
that
can't.
everyday thing that
Mm,
you kept having to prove yourself. Every day
yeah.
I wake up, it's like a new battle of having to
Oh.
prove that I am what I am, and that is just wrong.
Let's go on to talk a bit more about you. Was there a particular author that inspired you to start writing?
Oh yes, I remember when I was young, maybe around 15 or 10. I read a lot of novels from around the age of 8. I remember my mom used to get really angry because I would lock myself up in the toilet reading books. And but I never thought I would wanted to be a writer. I just know I love reading.
Mm.
And my parents hate it because they're like, we do love for you to read, but can you do your chores? So I used to get an earful for that.
Mm.
But I remember when I read Beloved by Toni Morrison, it
Mm.
just struck me. I just love the craft of it all, the narrative, everything, and I just thought, wow. And
Yeah.
then I read Accident by Diana Steele, and then I read Second Class Citizen by Buchi Emecha. She's a Nigerian writer, and all of those people The Art of a Woman by Maya Angelou. I mean, they stays with me so much
Yeah.
that made me thought, wow, these are authors that have really inspired me, and I thought, you know what, I want to do this. This is something I want to do,
Mm. Mm.
and yeah. And then I read you probably wouldn't have heard about, but I'm not sure. The Gods Are Not to Blame. I don't know if you've heard about that
No.
story. Yeah, it's by a Nigerian author. It's called Olarotimi. I remember seeing that play loads of time and thinking, how did someone create something as beautiful as this?
Mm.
And that just inspired me to want to write screenplay too.
You're a higher education professional working as a senior performance consultant at the Open University. What is a senior performance consultant? What do you do?
Loads of things, but what I'm just gonna say is I'm gonna use the vision of the department I work for. Basically, what I do is I help make things better. We have got a say in my department.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what we do, we can't leave it the same.
Mm-hmm.
We can't make it worse. It's gonna be a little bit better,
That's
and
good.
that's what I do.
That's good.
So I mean, I have got different qualification, different experience. So really, it's just I go into a department, I work with them. They say, okay, this is the problem we've got, and I work with them to find a solution and implement that solution. But really, my area is really strong in project management.
Mm.
So it's about is it that they want to implement something, or they want to produce something, or they want to write something, and they're saying this is the problem we've got, and then I come in and I work with the team, and we find a solution. But the thing I love about it is people. I get to work with people. People are amazing, and I've always said that we've got to remember that people are they're not a switch you can turn them on and off.
Mm.
It's blood and water, and that's the amazing thing. It's about being able to work with people, being able to promote, enable, and inspire people
Yes.
to do something, and
Yeah.
that's the key thing for me. So even though I do say, I've helped to find a solution, it's about that working relationship, that building that relationship, that trust.
Mm.
And that's what I do.
You've also produced short plays. Tell me about them. Where have they been performed?
So my short plays are usually being performed in small theaters in London.
Right.
Yes, and of course small theaters also across Milton Keynes. So really, it's just that usually very short. Really, rather than the usual play that sometimes go for 3 hours, they usually 1.5 hours.
Okay.
But the key thing for my short play is, like I said, I'm exploring that thing that is not conventional. So the last one that I wrote, we were exploring what it actually means. The question you've asked, what it means to be an immigrant,
Right.
And how an immigrant navigates the world in the UK, and then and it was beautiful to see, because the thing about me is I've always said that you can, in terms of the craft, I don't want to see things from one side. It's about seeing it from all sides.
Sure, but that gives it depth, doesn't it?
Yeah, but also not losing the core value of things. Because by saying it from all sides doesn't also mean that you have to say, I'm going to ignore that because that's too deep to talk about. Just what I mean. You do give it the fair devotion that everything needs, but you give it from all sides. Because the key thing for me is about giving voices
Yes.
to the character and letting them, because like they're human beings and letting them journey. And sometimes, and again, one of the things that stuck with me is when Toni Morrison also said, she's one of the authors that inspire me. She said, you've got to remember that not everyone will like what you write. You cannot aim to please everyone.
No, absolutely.
And you have to be true to the craft. Yeah.
So what's next on the book front for Grace T. Solomon?
An amazing thing, I hope. So right now I am exploring science fiction.
Okay.
Which would be like a long way from literary fiction that I've just written. This story is actually inspired. This science fantasy fiction is inspired by the death of my brother. This book that I'm currently writing.
Right.
When my brother died, I just, that is that unanswered question about where he is right now.
Okay.
And that stayed with me for month. And I don't think I'm there yet. I want to write about what it means to lose someone, because I'm still grieving. And every day I still wake up and I'm still trying to process what it means that he's not here.
Sure.
So I thought, and then one day I wanted to explore what this other us means. When people die, is a whole new world. So I'm writing this science fiction that's talking about two different worlds. This us right here and the other us in another world. And I'm using a young girl to bridge the gap, or for us to be able to see into these two worlds.
Oh, it sounds brilliant. I can't wait to talk to you about it.
Me too.
Lastly, where can Book Talk Radio Club's listeners purchase Torn and Power of Us?
So Torn is available at Waterstones. And also you can buy it on Amazon. So you can book for it right now at Waterstones and Amazon. And also any of your library, you can get it. But Power in Us is only available via Amazon as a digital copy.
All right. Well, thank you, Grace. That was great. Please come back on Book Talk Radio Club. I'd love to chat with you and hear more. In the meantime, thank you, everyone, for listening to Book Talk Radio Club. Thank you very much, Grace.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Claire.
Okay, bye now.
Bye.